the great honor and pleasure of being introduced to our first guest, who is Leonard Rodman. Leonard is a renowned AI evangelist, works in Midjourney, is what I would consider to be an expert at Midjourney, has written several children's books actually using Midjourney. He's written guides on how to do consistent characters. He is a chat GPT prompt engineer and really has been at the forefront of AI so long that actually last year, I believe, sir, that you were actually recognized as being one of the top, what was it, trailblazers, right?
Yeah.
That's right. So the and I don't want to shortchange it. The AI Revenue Summit Awards last year, 2024. Um, this man earned a recognition for being a trailblazer in that area, and also has just like the largest, one of the largest followings on LinkedIn for anything related to AI, especially AI creativity. And the reason that I brought him for you guys today is for that added oomph of like, here's what you need to know in terms of multi-tools and other things that you can do for content creation. So by all means, Leo, please take it away.
All right. So thanks so much for joining, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and dive right in since we're running a little bit late. So the purpose of this series or session is going to be just sort of teaching a little bit of AI basics. The idea being that in order to use AI effectively, it's helpful to understand a little bit about how it works. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do it. All right. So hopefully everyone can see all right.
Yep.
So one of the first things that comes up is people talking about AI like it's like a magic wand and it just does stuff magically. I think that's not really the case, nor is it alive, right? It's not like a zombie. It's just a tool, right? It's a tool like any other tool that we have in our tool belt, like HubSpot, right? Like email, like the internet, like your computer or your cell phone. It's just a tool. And while anyone can achieve really cool stuff with it, I think the more you know about it, the easier it is to achieve cool things with it. So maybe it's a little bit of a magic tool. I don't want to take that sort of magic thing away from it. But the idea, like I mentioned before, is to not be a cave person, right? To understand really how AI works. So just like medicine, where you have to understand all the different parts of the body holistically or all together as a whole, it's important with AI to understand kind of how the innards of it work. And I think we all recognize that there's some value in having basic understanding. Like you wouldn't want to drive your car without knowing the basics of how to like check the air in the tires or maybe change a flat or at least know how to contact AAA so they can change a flat for you. That, you know, there's some value and there's some safety in understanding how things work. So to understand the AI, I think it's helpful to go back a little bit, probably about 20, maybe even 30 years, um, which is when natural language processing started to be a thing. And this is the idea of like talking to your computer. So this came around with like Dragon naturally speaking, with people using dictation on the computer. It developed into things like Alexa and Siri, which are, you know, kind of like an AI. You know, it's debatable where that line is drawn. And the idea is that your computer is parsing or breaking apart your sentences to understand them. So, you know, obviously Siri has some more AI stuff in it nowadays, but Siri versus ChatGPT, you know, really the idea is that an AI is able to go a level beyond NLP, beyond natural language processing. So Siri can like play some music for you because it's programmed to do that. But if you ask Siri to do something that is like off the rails, basically, right? That it's something it's not specifically programmed to do, it's not going to be able to do it. Whereas ChatGPT is able to think more outside the box just because of the way it's programmed. This is because Siri is more algorithmic. It's more like an automation workflow where you have to have specific things programmed in for it to do. It can't figure stuff out on its own. One important consideration is data security. You want to be sure that since you're like giving all your personal information to this AI, that that data is being treated in a secure way. So this is one reason why I tell people it's important to pay for your AI. Don't use a free one. When you use a free one, generally you're giving up all your rights in order to have it free. Frequently, this includes the company using your data for training, which means that if you put like a list of you and your friends' social security numbers and credit card numbers in there, you're giving that information away. Now, that's obviously a very simplistic example. I think most people know not to stick their credit card numbers and social security card numbers into an AI, but just conversing with it, you may mention things about your life, like what your job is, where you live, your kids' names. And that could allow someone to build up a profile on you. So again, it's important to buy an AI because then as part of the terms and conditions, which is a contract basically, the company is almost always going to be agreeing not to sell your data, not to store your data unless you tell them to, and to treat it in a secure way. And I think that this brings up the important point of some of these new models in China. So DeepSeek, it's a very cool model. It's very good. Tencent has a similar one as well. They're the people who make phone games. Now they're in the AI business because they're smart, I guess. They saw where the money was going. QWQ or Quen is another big model coming out of China. And when you're using one of these Chinese models, not only is it, a free model, but it's also coming out of China, which means that, for better or worse, the Chinese government probably has some input into that. They, were able to put their finger on the scale, so it probably will tell you things about how like communism is great and capitalism is the worst. Um, it also, probably has backdoors for the Chinese government to be able to access any data that's in there. So if you're using one of these Chinese models, even if you're running it locally in the US, I think that there's a great potential for abuse. So I think it's very important to only use models that are coming from countries that like have a good human rights record, that have a good privacy record. Generally, places like most of the EU, probably all the EU, the United States. And not only do you want a model that's programmed in one of those countries, you want a model that's run in one of those countries. So, like, I wouldn't use a free version of an AI running on a Chinese website, even if it's supposedly ChatGPT or something like that. Like, say they told you they're running Meta Llama, which is a US-based model, but they're running it in China. I wouldn't trust that either, just for data security reasons. And this brings up the idea of transparent or explainable AI. Basically, the idea here is that, we don't really understand how AIs work. The way they programmed AIs was they said basically program yourself, and the AIs did, but we don't really understand fully how they do what they do, how that works. So in the future, it's a goal to have what are known as transparent or explainable AIs. And this is AIs where we understand the inner workings. So in the future, hypothetically, even if a model came from China, if it was transparent and explainable and you could look at all the inner workings, hypothetically, it would be possible to review all that code, understand how it works, and to be able to trust that model. Regardless of where a model is coming from, whether it's China or the US, it's hard to trust AI fully because we don't really understand its inner workings. So that's a goal for the future, to understand the inner workings in order to be able to trust the models more. So another security consideration is on-premises versus off-premises. On-premises is when you run the AI like in a server closet at your company headquarters. Off-premises would be most likely if you're running it in the cloud. Really, I don't think there's any big difference. Again, I would just encourage people to look at companies that are US based for security reasons. Not so much because a criminal is going to get in there, but more likely because the government wants to get in there, and it's important to have security, making sure that your data is secure. So is cloud inherently less secure? I would say no at this point. Protocols are very good for sending data back and forth between locations. Potentially one benefit, frankly, for the cloud is while you might not have 24-hour security at your physical location for on-premises, with off-premises cloud, they're probably going to have a security guard guarding that server 24 hours a day. So in a way, it could potentially be more secure. One other consideration that comes into play, especially if you're looking at on versus off premises, would be whether you're going to buy versus build your models. So if you're building a model yourself, it can cost $500,000 up into the billions, typically around $1 million or so to build a basic model. You're going to have more control over that model. You're going to have longer term costs that are lower. But your upfront costs obviously are much higher. If you're buying someone else's AI, you can get that for, $10 a month off the bat, versus spending $1 million to build a model. But long term, for a large company, it can make sense to build a model. So here's an example of how you might potentially build a model using something like Hugging Face. Feel free to take a look at that after. That's a place where you can look at different models and build them and modify them. So unfortunately, I do have a hard stop just to warn people, but I'll cover as much as I can between now and 11:30. So computer vision is when you have a model look at an image. That would be like if you take a picture and feed it into ChatGPT. This can also be used for more future use cases, which we're starting to see where an AI is able to control your computer. You just let it have free reign on your computer. You say, I want you to open up Microsoft Word, and it figures out how to do that. That's done by having the AI parse images coming into it. Generally, they're turning them into text from an image in order to analyze them. And this relates to a prior process known as RPA, robotic process automation, or screen reading. This, again, is the same idea that the robot or AI is reading your screen. RPA is a technology that's probably been around for 20 years, much like natural language processing, and is kind of a precursor to modern AI. Go ahead and skip some of this. So cleaning and labeling is an important part of training an AI. Unlabeled or unclean or unstructured data is just, files and files and files. And we need people to take that data and either clean it or annotate it in order to make it readable by an AI. So that's one task that we see a lot where companies are hiring people to label or structure data in order to feed it into an AI. And this has actually become an issue where we're basically running out of data to feed to AIs. So I think this is one thing in the future that will lead to greater equity or fairness, that companies are going to need more data. So they're going to have to pay people to produce that data. And this is going to touch a lot on sort of fairness, on equity, on law. I think that content creators deserve to be paid, and it's unfair that AI companies have essentially been taking and using their data for free without compensating this. This includes like photographers, painters, digital artists, authors, writers, newspapers. All those people deserve to be paid for their data. And the fact that we're running out of data means that in the future, we're going to have a system that's more fair. So unfortunately, as I mentioned, I do unfortunately have to go to another meeting now, but I hope that this was helpful to people. Obviously, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, any of the other social media platforms, and connect with me. And I'd love to teach more about AI. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for dropping in, Leo.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, everyone.
So, if you guys have any questions, I'm a very decent backup in terms of if you have any questions related to using AI for content creation or like what tools to use best, recommendations, things of that nature. We have until 12:40. Unfortunately, timing got a little bit pushed back with the main talk, so you're stuck with me for the next 8 minutes. All right. It is pretty funny to be so like at least the funny part to me is doing this while doing agent runs in the back. And it's like, yeah, no, that's very cool. Let me just make this adjustment to this prompt and then do this push.
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions, Nico. I was here to learn more, as always.
Well,
Hey, Will, how are you today?
Hey, Nico.
how's it
Hey,
going, sir?
Good,
Pleasure
man.
to see you.
congrats on number six.
Thank you. Thank you. We're excited. So, Nico, for those who may be early stages getting into AI, where would you
Mm.
say the easiest place, the safest place to kind of get your hands dirty would be?
Easiest, safest place. So when you say, yeah, so data safety, safest place to get your hands dirty would probably be Claude. I say that because by default, the model doesn't train on anything. So anything that you discuss, use, files, uploads, any of that stuff does not go back to Anthropic. It stays client side. So that's a really good place to, start getting used to it. Also being, you're going to get a little spoiled with it. But and I say that only because, so let's talk about like content creation. All of these things are different tools in a toolbox. And when it comes to using GPT, it's really like to me, that's like me going to an engineer, surgeon, PhD, like somebody it's information, seriously information based. Claude is much more, the only description I can give it is like human. So it has a much more almost natural reaction to what it is that you're asking for and trying to do. Especially the latest model, if you include the reasoning aspect to it, does a wonderful job when it comes to just verbal problem solving and working through like either ideation or again, like just coming up with content, like written content of any type, visual descriptions, things of that nature. Um, but when it comes to like crunching data, that's where I stay on the GPT side of things, only because it's better at it. It's a much faster workhorse as well. Um, and it's a little bit more reliable to me. And I say that only because I do a lot of stuff that involves mathematics, and so it sucks really bad when you use something like Gemini and it does the wrong addition or it does the wrong formula and screws it up entirely. So, but yeah, I would start with Claude in terms of like text models, and then for image models, if you're trying to do if you're working real for image models, I would start with Adobe Firefly. It's a real easy like place to start where you can start with your prompting. It's very easy to actually let me just pull it up real quick because nothing's nothing beats demos. Okay, so Firefly, I like it because it's so very like user friendly. It's very intuitive, right? So even right out the gate, right away we can either build an image or build a video. And then even if you're working on images, so we'll start with a parrot in the jungle, right? So yeah, it's not that big a deal. Um, at the bottom, you'll see what Firefly is really good at that a lot of apps don't really do. Meta does this, but only on mobile. Is once you start writing your prompt, it will actually start pushing out little suggestions, and it doesn't like necessarily stop there. You could say, okay, with trees and an umbrella, and then it's like, okay, well, trees and an umbrella, what? Reflected on a lens, trying to escape. Like, so it can help you with the ideation of trying to create that prompt for the visual that you're going after. The second reason I like it is because being a former designer, having having 4 ups or like 8 ups or just being able to do thumbnails really quickly in general is a nice way to be able to work. And then you can learn I say this, it just, you could spend an asinine amount of time working in image models, but this gives you a very quick and easy way of learning, like, oh, okay, here's how I change composition stuff. Here's what strength does. Here's what styles do. Here's what effects do. And once you learn these basic panels, they apply all over. So every image model has these same basic principles to them. Just they look different. They might have different knobs and stuff like that, but they're all fairly the same thing, right? And that's the only reason I like Fireflies because it's like, yeah, just point click, type stuff in, and off you go.
Awesome.
Anything else? Joseph, welcome. Any AI questions that you have
So,
or even
say, Will,
I'm
oh, sorry, Joseph.
no, you go, Dave. I missed most of the session, so I would rather hear from you.
No, I was just going to say, I think, some of the things that we're looking at, Will, is like GPTs for sales. So think about, the documents that we have always put into email templates, right? Which would be, hey, here, learn about our product, and we give somebody something to read. Now we can give somebody something to interact with, somebody to talk to, get the questions that they want answered, rather than interacting with a document that we don't know if they're going to read or not read. And I think the ability to interact with the agent is really going to help remove a lot of objections throughout that sales process. If they have an agent that they can work with, as think about it as you're going through the pipeline, instead of sending those documents or sending the document plus an agent, that agent is a soft way to remove objections in the sales process. And I think something we're going to be leaning into heavily with our clients, right?
yeah. And it's the VoIP aspect of it is going to make it all the more attractive. Like just being able to have that natural interaction with your business. And I was actually working with somebody last night and introducing them to the exact same fact of like, hey, you could build this for your business. You can put your transcripts in it. You can put your files in it, and now you're actually talking to your business. And it can build out your voice, and it can build out your brand, and it can build out your content, right? Like you learn how to take these tools and like especially us like when we build out models for people, we're going to get kicked out in less than a minute. Okay. But especially when we start building out models for people and building out agents, it's literally like having that constant brand voice. A lot of the problem that companies tend to have is that they keep moving forward, do new projects, keep moving forward, expand a little bit, and they lose track. They lose track of their mission, they lose track of their brand voice, they lose track of how things are supposed to sound. And then all of a sudden it becomes opinion. Well, so and so knows how it is, or so that such and such knows how it is. Now you have the model. It knows how everything is. It stays on track all the time. It writes everything on brand all the time. It speaks on brand all the time. It's a whole new world.
And are you guys
Joseph,
building any agents outside of the HubSpot ecosystem for businesses?
um, soon.
Okay. All right.